Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Focus on Student Services session. In our session this evening, we'll be looking at areas such as student fees, access and disability, accommodation, and sports scholarships. So please remember, if you do have any questions over the course of the next hour or so, please use the Q&A facility and just send them on in, and I'll put them to our various presenters at the end of the presentations. So to start us off, I'll hand you over now to Teresa Casey, who will be talking about student fees.
Thanks, Pat. Sorry, just next slide. So, good evening. I will give you a brief overview of the following topics: undergraduate course fees, how much the course fees are going to cost, how to pay fees, approximate payment dates, funding assistance available, and useful contacts. So moving on to the next slide. So understanding course fees. Course fees are broadly categorised as EU or non-EU fees. Fees can be further categorised into three components: tuition fees, student contribution fees, and levies. At registration, students will be asked a series of questions to determine if they should be charged EU or non-EU rate of fees. The EU non-EU assessment guide on your screen can be found on the fees section of our website. I would encourage all students to take a look at it before registration. Moving to the next slide. Tuition fees may be paid on your behalf by the Higher Education Authority or the HEA under the Free Fees Initiative. This funding is not means tested, and you could be eligible for this funding if you meet certain criteria. I have included a sample of eligibility criteria on the slide. A full list of eligibility criteria can be found on the HEA website. Student contribution charge is payable by you, but if you are eligible for a SUSI grant, this will be paid on your behalf by SUSI. SUSI grant is means tested, and further information can be found on the SUSI website. I will leave the contact details for both the SUSI and the HEA website at the end of this presentation. College levies are payable by all students and are not paid by the HEA or by SUSI. The next slide. So this is an overview of the fees and the undergraduate fees in Mary Immaculate College. And as a guide for today's presentation, the slide shows the undergraduate course fees for the current academic year only. However, we don't expect these fees to change for the next academic year. College fees shown are payable for each year of study unless otherwise stated. As stated above, the tuition may be funded by the HEA and the student contribution may be funded by SUSI. College levies do vary per course. So, for example, IT support, school placement and theatre study levies are payable in each academic year. And you can see that Garda vetting, the sportswear levy and the ArtPack levies are payable in the first year of study only. The graduation levy is payable in the final year only. And moving to the next slide. The fees on the screen are for our level 6 and 7 programmes, the column on the left being the EU fees and the column on the right the rate of the non-EU fees. And moving to the next slide. Some programmes have mandatory field trips, such as the Gaeltacht and Geography field trips. If these field trips do go ahead, the cost of the field trip is payable directly to the field trip provider and is not paid through the fees office. The course leaders will be able to provide you with more detail on the field trips. SUSI may reimburse students for the cost of field trips, and please visit the SUSI website for further information on this. And moving to the next slide. So how to pay your fees. The quickest and easiest way to pay your fees is through the student portal. Once you are registered with the college, you will have access to your student portal. When you log in, you click on fees and click pay fees. Also, we have an automated telephone line, which is available 24/7. You can view the phone number here on the screen. Payment can also be made by bank transfer. Please reference bank transfers with your student ID number, as this is our only way to trace the funds. Our bank details can be found on the fees page of the MIC website. Unfortunately, we don't accept cheques or cash. And next slide. So what happens if you don't pay your fees? Students with outstanding fees may not receive their examination results and may not be permitted to progress to the next academic session. You can find full details on our fees page of the website, and our full fee regulations are on that. And moving to the next slide. So, key dates. Fees can be paid in a single instalment at the beginning of the semester, or in 2 instalments. The first instalment in early September and the second instalment in early January, basically before the teaching begins in each semester. The exact dates will be published closer to the time. At registration, you will be given the option to pay your fees in full or to split the payment in 2. Levies must be paid in full with the first instalment. And moving to the next slide. Funding. As discussed above, the HEA may fund the tuition element of your fees. SUSI may fund the student contribution element of your fees. Mary Immaculate College offers payment plans to students that are in financial difficulty. Payment plans are set up for each academic year. There is a payment plan fee of €50, and if you would like to set one up, please contact the Student Fees Office. I'll leave their contact details at the end of the presentation. The college also offers support through the Access Office and has various scholarships available, which my colleagues will speak to you shortly about. Also, I'd like to bring up about exits and refunds. Particularly as it's a very uncertain time, students may receive Leaving Cert upgrades and may obtain a higher place in another college or university within the same academic year. If this occurs, the fees will be refunded in full. It's also worth noting that if a student exits in the first week of college, the fees will be refunded, but an admin charge of €100 will be charged. If a student exits after the first week and before the 31st of October, fees will be refunded, but on a pro rata basis. And be mindful that this does not impact your HEA free fees initiative. If you exit after the 31st of October, your HEA free fees initiative funding will be impacted. And moving to the next slide. So this is just a quick SUSI frequently asked questions. The Fees Office often receive queries in relation to their SUSI applications, and these are mainly dealt with by the SUSI Office themselves, but we have put a frequently asked questions page on our fees page on the website, answering questions that you can see on the screen. And moving to the last slide. So finally, you will see a list of contact details for the HEA, SUSI and various offices within Mary Immaculate College. Should you have any queries in relation to the presentation or any fee queries, please contact the Student Fees team and we would be more than happy to help you. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much there, Teresa. That was a very informative presentation. There's a lot of detail there. So there's plenty of information on your screen, and please remember that this talk is also recorded. So if you do want to get any of those email addresses, or maybe have a quick run back over some of the information that Teresa gave there, you can always look back on it on our website, micopenday.ie. All the previous talks will be put up there. Those talks were pre-recorded in due course. So our next speaker is from the Access and Disability Office, Maura Moore, and Maura will go through the various schemes such as the Here and There scheme and various other bits and pieces that might be relevant for students who are thinking of coming to us in the next number of months. So I'll now pass you over to Maura.
Good evening and welcome to the webinar this evening on behalf of the Access and Disability Support Service in Mary Immaculate College. What you see in front of you is a synopsis of the Mary Immaculate College Access Policy, which underscores our commitment to widening participation and achieving equity of access to higher education for students from underrepresented groups in third level. That would be socio-economically disadvantaged students and students with a disability, lone parents, mature students and students from minority backgrounds. Research has shown that these cohorts of students are underrepresented at third level, and we want to widen participation from these groups of students. And it's not just a matter of widening participation. We want to make sure that our access students are able to engage in every aspect of student life. And it is within the it is within the remit of the Access Office to facilitate supports and services for our Access students. In our next slide, I am just going to give you a quick overview of the supports and services, and I'll go into further detail on later slides. So we provide supports and services at pre-entry and at post-entry stage. At pre-entry stage, we get a lot of inquiries from students on access issues, and they also want assistance with making their DARE and HEAR applications. The kind of questions we would get in relation to access matters would be from students with disabilities. They want to know what kind of disability supports we have in the college, and we do encourage students with disabilities to make contact with the office to become familiar with the supports that are available. We also get queries from students. Sorry, my throat's a bit foggy this afternoon. We also get queries from students, from Access students, who would find the cost of coming to college prohibitive, and they want to know what kind of financial supports are available post-entry. And as I said earlier, we do get inquiries about making HEAR and DARE applications. Then, as I mentioned, I did mention the financial assistance, which I will go into later on, and the HEAR and DARE application. And our Access and Disability Office is the designated office to provide the HEAR post-entry supports and also to put in place the disability accommodations. Now, our next slide, we're going to look at HEAR. HEAR is the higher education access route to education. It is an admission scheme which is operated by most of the colleges in Ireland. The HEAR scheme, it offers students the opportunity to get onto their course that they want on reduced points. Of course, all these students have to meet the minimum entry requirements. By getting a place on HEAR, it's not just an admission route, it's also the fact that we provide post-entry supports as well for HEAR eligible students. And the practical supports such as printing top-up, practical costs, practical supports with college materials. In order to be eligible for HEAR, students must meet a number of indicators in relation to their personal circumstances. And all those indicators are laid out in the accesscollege.ie website. There are, as I said, there are 6 indicators, and the one indicator that all students have to meet is the low income indicator. And I'm very sorry about my throat. And there are more indicators there, such as whether the family has a medical card or a GP card, whether there was a social welfare means tested payment there, whether the student attended a DEIS school or it comes from an area of disadvantage. The student doesn't have to meet all the indicators, just as long as they meet 3 indicators and the right combination of indicators. It's important to note here that HEAR is not the SUSI grant. Every year I get inquiries, and there's a bit of confusion from students that the HEAR and the SUSI are the same. They are not. But I would say to students that if you are going to apply to HEAR, you should also consider applying to SUSI. Now, next slide, please. DARE is the is the disability access route to education. To be eligible for DARE, you must meet both the DARE educational impact criteria and the DARE evidence of disability criteria. What is that? For the particular disability that a student may have, they have to provide a specialist report from the relevant consultant. They also must provide the educational impact statement from their school, and the impact statement is completed with the student by the school and details the impact of their disability on their second level education. Next slide, please. If students are eligible for HEAR and DARE reduced, they can be offered a reduced points place in one of the colleges that they're applying for. In Mary Immaculate College, we have a quota of 5% of reduced points places for HEAR and DARE eligible applicants. Students, regardless of whether they're eligible for HEAR and DARE, they have to meet the minimum requirements for matriculation purposes. They also have to achieve a minimum of 300 points and come within 40 points of the CAO cutoff for the course that they want in the relevant year. What I mean by that is, for example, if the cutoff for one of our programs is 370 points and the student has that course down as one of their preferences, the access office with the admissions office will look at that particular candidate, and if the candidate achieves at least 330 points, they will be considered for one of our reduced points places. That doesn't mean that they will actually get offered the place, but they will be considered. Because the awarding of reduced points places are based on priority categories, and they're also based on a competitive basis. So, for example, with DARE, students with a physical disability and students with sensory disabilities are prioritised. Students who are eligible for both schemes, HEAR and DARE, are prioritised, and the residual places, reduced points places, are offered on a competitive basis. So those places that are offered on a competitive basis, so for example, a student again going with the cutoff at 370 points, if the student's waiting for a reduced points place, if one of the students is on 365 points, another student's on 360 points, the student on 365 points would get offered the place ahead of a student on 360 points. But the students with physical disabilities and sensory disabilities would be prioritised ahead of those students. Next slide, please. Again, this is another thing that comes up every year. Students that have a language exemption based on disability grounds. These students can apply to have their language waiver noted for matriculation purposes. And the MIC language exemption application can be downloaded from the Access and Disability webpage, and the completed application and supporting documentation has to be forwarded by email to the Access Office at Mary Immaculate College by the 1st of July. A language exemption can only be granted on courses where Irish or a language is not a course requirement. So, for example, for all the BEd programs, Gaeilge is a requirement. So a language exemption will not be taken into account for those courses. Cannot be applied, in other words. It's also important to note here that students have sent on NUI language exemptions to the Access Office for noting we are not an NUI college, so we cannot accept an NUI language exemption waiver for MIC matriculation purposes. Students have to complete the MIC language exemption on the Access and Disability web page. They can download the application and complete it and send it in to us. Next slide, please. I'm going to speak here very briefly on the supports for students with disabilities, because I could go into it in greater detail, but students are more than welcome to contact me, by email for further details. All students with disabilities, not just DARE students, should register with the College Disability Support Service for reasonable accommodations. We find that there are three main categories of supports for students with disabilities learning difficulties, and they would be categorised as follows: academic learning supports, assistive technology supports, personal supports, and then there are other supports that will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Academic learning supports, students registered with the College Disability Support Service who have a learning difficulties can avail of our own designated learning support tutor to provide assistance with study skills, essay support, planning essays, organisational supports. Assistive technology supports, this makes the student more independent, sets them up for life post Mary Immaculate College. Students with disabilities are referred to our assistive technology advisor, who would advise on who will recommend various technologies to support the student. That could be literacy support software, voice recognition software, mind mapping software. And then there could be things like personal supports. Some students may need personal assistance for mobility around the college, and they may need support with transport. These are all personal supports, and they will be considered on a case-by-case basis. We now look at our next slide. Our next slide, please. Finally, financial support. The Student Assistance Fund is administered by the Access Office on behalf of the college. The Student Assistance Fund provides financial support to full or part-time students who are experiencing temporary or ongoing financial difficulties while attending college. The Student Assistance Fund is designed to provide a source of financial support in addition to other sources of income, such as SUSI grant. Now, I say that because sometimes students might think that the Student Assistance Fund will help with all their items of expenditure, i.e. their total rent, all their transport costs. Unfortunately, no, it cannot help with all the costs. All it can do is, to support your main line of support, i.e., which is usually the SUSI grant. It supplements the SUSI grant, in other words, or if a student is getting support from their guardians or parents, it supports the income. It supports the support coming from your parents. And so I would always say to students, that if they're struggling, if they're having difficulties with paying a bill, if some emergency comes up, to please contact the Access Office for information and advice on making an application. So just to finish up, I just want to put our email there for you all to see. It's the Access Office at mic.ul.ie. And if you go to the Study at Mary Immaculate College website, you'll see our web pages, Access and Disability, where there's more detailed information And if you have any queries about tonight's presentation, please do contact us and I can give you more detailed information and maybe answer, your own personal circumstances. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and I'll leave it at that, Pat. Okay, thank you. Sorry, can I just say I'm very, very sorry for the throating, for the throat this evening. I know I'm coming across as if I'm gasping for breath, but as I said, my sinuses are at me. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thanks very much, Maura, and thanks for, it was a bit of a struggle there to get through that, but well done. So our next speaker is John Randalls, and John will be talking about accommodation at MIC and all the various things concerning students in that area. So I'll now hand you over to John.
Thank you, Pat. The two main accommodations run by Mary Immaculate College are Corprac Accommodation in Limerick and St. Patrick's on-campus accommodation in Thurles, both offering accommodation in a safe and secure environment. Corprac is a purpose-built 85-room complex providing accommodation for undergraduate students for the college in Limerick, both male and female. It has 24-hour security, is a 5-minute walk from the campus, and is self-catering. Rooms are not en suite. Each corridor has 6 bedrooms and 2 shared shower rooms. There's a spacious communal kitchen, which has lockable storage for each student, as well as hot water facilities, microwaves, ovens, hobs, fridges and freezers. There's also a large TV room with couches and coffee tables. The accommodation for St. Patrick's Thurles is on campus and has 36 ensuite rooms, 12 on each floor over 3 floors, catering for male and female first-year students on a single room basis. There are communal kitchens and lounge areas on each floor, and there's 24-hour security available here as well. Both complexes have daily housekeeping service for communal areas. The process for applying for accommodation in either of these complexes are basically, you just go onto the college homepage, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the links, and underneath Study at MIC, you'll see accommodation 4th from the bottom. If you click on that, you'll get into the accommodation page. Now, when you're on the accommodation page, just scroll down a bit. There's a little bit of information about both those complexes, but you go down further on the left-hand side of the page, you'll see how to book. And then underneath how to book, you'll see the 2021-22 section, where there's links to download information sheets and booking forms for both Corprac and for the Thurles on-campus accommodation. And there's also information on the cost, how much it costs, and what to do and how to book and all that kind of thing. It's important that you send a fully completed booking form first to the office here, or you can either email or post it to us, so we can have a look at your details and set them up on the system. And then if you want to go ahead and transfer a deposit, you give us a call and we'll let you know that how things are, and if we're still taking deposits at that stage. Deposits are only by bank transfer. We cannot accept checks or cash, as was said earlier. Forms are available now, and we're taking calls regarding deposits. Now, also on that accommodation page, on the right-hand side of the page, as you scroll down, you'll see a list of privately owned student accommodations complexes that are near the colleges. There's links onto their websites, so have a look through them, whatever. If you need any advice or you want any information on any of these accommodations, I have plenty of information on them. Please don't hesitate to give the office a call. My number here is 061 302 500 anytime. But there's also on that page, there's a list of owner-occupied properties. They're usually small houses, apartments, and also there's an awful lot of owner-occupied properties on that list as well, which you can have a look at too. So that's it really. As I said, do not hesitate to ring the office at any time. The office is manned all the time at the moment, so please don't hesitate to give me a ring if you need any more information. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Pat.
Thanks very much, John. And just a reminder to any of our viewers, if you do have any questions this evening for any of our presenters, please just use the Q&A facility and I will put the questions to them at the end of the session. So our next topic is sports scholarships here at MIC, and I'll now hand you over to Kate Dwyer, who'll tell you all about that.
Thank you very much, Pat. Yes, I'm Kate Dwyer. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about two different sports scholarship schemes that we have here in MIC, and they're new. For the first time we introduced them last year, so it's still a new initiative for us, so we're very excited about these schemes. Next slide. So the sports scholarship schemes. As you've heard already, Mary Immaculate College has a range of initiatives for incoming students to provide financial and academic supports, including two sports scholarship schemes. The sports scholarship scheme, that's an elite sports scholarship scheme, and the CAO Points Concession Sports Scheme. These schemes are specific to and funded by Mary Immaculate College. Next slide. Okay, so for both schemes, there's a minimum standard of sporting participation, and there's quite a lot listed there. I can go down through some of them with you. And they're valid for both schemes, even though the criteria for selection for the schemes are slightly different. So I'll get to that. So really, the minimum standard of anybody interested in applying to the schemes must have this standard of participation. So for both schemes in Gaelic games, minor county level, or higher, we'll say hockey, we're really looking at international or interprovincial and international representation. Athletics is listed there, rugby, soccer, basketball, rowing. Also, we'll consider other sports not necessarily listed here, and we look at the standards of participation for those, but they would need to be recognised by a sporting body, and applicants must have strong evidence of their participation in these sports. So go to the next slide. So just to tell you a little bit about the elite sports scholarships. So we have two elite sports scholarships in memory of former MIC staff members Noreen Lynch and Leonard Enright. And these will be available to students who have excelled in their chosen sports. The value of each scholarship will be up to €4,000, and it will be delivered through a fee waiver and additional benefits. Those additional benefits will include a bursary, membership to the college gym, and also some sports gear, some college sports gear. These scholarships, which were introduced in the last academic year, so in 2021, are open to incoming CAO applicants. But they're also open to current undergraduate and postgraduate students across both Limerick and Thurles campuses. So these are not confined to the CAO students. All our students in MIC can apply for these elite sports scholarships. Next slide, please. Okay, to be considered eligible for the elite sports scholarship, in addition to the minimum standard, to be considered an elite sports person, applicants must clearly demonstrate that they have the potential to or are already performing at adult intercounty level with respect to Gaelic games, adult international, or achieve the highest level of participation within the sports category. So really we're looking for, for you to be considered an elite sports person and to apply for these scholarships, really looking at the highest level of performance in that category. Like we say, incoming undergraduate applicants apply for their programme of choice as normal through the CAO, and then they must also apply directly to MIC for the Elite Sports Scholarship Scheme. This is done through an online application form. Postgraduate applicants and current MIC applicants can apply directly to MIC. Again, it'll be through the online application form, and they have to provide information of their application number, etc. The deadline for receipt of applications will be the 1st of May, and that's the same for both schemes. So the difference between the Elite Sports Scholarships and the Point Concession schemes is for it to be considered an Elite Sports Scholarship, applicants really need to be competing at the highest level of their sports. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Now, just to tell you a little bit about the CAO Points Concession Scheme, and needless to say, this is only for CAO applicants. So MIC's CAO Points Concession Sports Scheme is an academic entry scheme for performance athletes applying for full-time Level 8 undergraduate programs in MIC Thurles or Limerick. We have up to 10 places across all undergraduate programs that will be reserved for outstanding candidates who have achieved a very high level of sporting performance and are committed to continuing to develop their sporting and academic careers in Mary Immaculate College. Successful applicants who meet all the necessary entry requirements and who also meet the sports assessment criteria, as I've mentioned, will be eligible for the points reduction of up to 40 points below the first round CAO, sorry, just came up there, first round cutoff points with the CAO. So really what you're looking for is that we have 10 places available to candidates, and they must meet the entry requirements and also be within 40 points of first round CAO cutoff for the programme which they've applied for. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so to be considered for the CAO Points Concession Scheme, students must have applied for a programme at MIC through the CAO. They must also meet the entry requirements for their desired Level 8. They need to come within 40 points of the first round CAO points for their nominated programme. They must participate in a sport recognised by the Irish Sporting Council, and they must be able to provide evidence that they are competing at the highest level available in their chosen sports and have an identifiable potential for future improvement. This is all done through the through the online application. So there's questions on the standard of sporting achievements that you've achieved to date. Okay, next slide, please. So currently these applications are open, and incoming undergraduate applicants can apply for their programme as normal through the CAO. Applicants will then also need to apply directly to MIC for the scheme via the online application. As I've mentioned earlier, for the Elite Sports Scholarship Scheme and this scheme too, the applications will be open until the 1st of May. The CAO applicants can apply for both schemes, so they can apply for the Elite Sports Scholarship and they can also apply for the CAO Points Concession Scheme, but they must make 2 applications, so you need to apply for both schemes online. All awardees are expected to act as ambassadors for MIC in terms of their participation in their chosen sports or other activities as requested by the college for the duration of their scholarship. Next slide, please. And just to say that the application is open at the moment. Students and applicants are very welcome to apply. The CAO concession scheme is available there. I've listed where they can get it on the website, and the Elite Sports Scholarship too. And if you have any queries, we also have a designated email, sportschemes@mic.ul.ie. And just to say, as with the other participants here this evening, that the information that I have mentioned here tonight is all available on the MIC website. So if there's anything you've missed or don't understand, you can either email us or go to the website. The full details are there. Okay, Pat, I'll pass back to you.
Thanks very much, Kate. A lot of detail there about the different sports scholarships in the college, so plenty of information. So if you do have any questions for any of our presenters so far, please just use the Q&A facility on your screen, and I will put them to them now in our live Q&A session. So just to start us off, we might go to Maura first. Maura, if that's okay with you, because we have a couple of questions to do with access.
It's okay, I'll drink water in the meantime.
That's good, Maura. You're sounding a lot better now, Maura. Yeah. That's great. So I suppose first question, Maura, is this person wants to know, can you do primary school teaching if you have a spelling grammar waiver?
Sorry, what do you, they can certainly apply like every other student to Mary Immaculate College for the B.Ed programme. And there are but spelling and grammar waiver do not apply. For example, we don't say spelling and grammar waiver at third level. What we refer to are marking guidelines for timed exams. So in the Leaving Cert, they refer to spelling and grammar waiver for their Leaving Cert subjects. At third level, we refer to marking guidelines for students with learning difficulties. And for subjects, let's say on the B.Ed programme, like for Gaeilge or English literacy, where spelling and grammar is an integral part of the subject, and those elements cannot be disallowed. You know what I mean? You are examined because that's an integral part of the subject. So there won't be, to answer your question, there would not be any waiver for spelling and grammar for any aspects of a course where spelling and grammar are an integral component of the subject. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks very much, Maura. And I think there's a follow-up one. It's probably from the same person, and you've probably answered it more or less already there. They also want to know, are there any courses that you cannot do with a spelling grammar waiver?
Are there any courses that you cannot do with a spelling and grammar waiver? Well, students with a spelling and grammar waiver apply to all our, let's say for their Leaving Cert, right? And they can apply to all our courses. But then what happens then when they get in is the application of a spelling and grammar waiver, which I refer to as marking guidelines. And that is how an actual module or a subject is examined at Mary Immaculate College at post-entry level. But there is nothing to stop a student who has a spelling and grammar waiver at Leaving Cert level applying to Mary Immaculate College for one of our courses. What actually happens then at post-entry, as I said, is where the actual subject is being examined, and the examination of that subject and the integral parts of that subject where marking guidelines cannot be applied. So to answer your question, any student with a spelling and grammar waiver can apply to any of our programs in Mary Immaculate College in a nutshell.
Thanks very much for that, Maura. And one more question before we turn over to someone else. Does the HERE program deal with mature and QQI applicants?
Okay, the HERE program is only for non-mature students. Mature students have their own alternative admission routes. So the HERE program is for up to 23 years of age, basically non-mature students, HERE students. So a HERE student could have done their Leaving Cert a couple of years ago and gone away and done other things and decided to come back and apply to Mary Immaculate College or any other college. And they can use their Leaving Cert from a couple of years ago to apply for HERE, as long as they're not a mature student. With regards to FETAC and other educational, let's say further education colleges, they also have their own access route. Okay, so mainly HERE here route is mainly for school leavers, is mainly for school, non-mature school leavers. Is that okay? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so, Maura. Thanks very much. We might move over to John now and accommodation next for a question. You just might unmute yourself there, John, as well. Question for you, John. Will you be made aware of housemates prior to move-in day for the Courtbrack accommodation?
Made aware? No, I won't be sending out a list of housemates, no. But what we do is, if you have friends that are also applying, there is a place on the application form where you can put their name, so you can be close with them on the same corridor or whatever. So we do put friends together if we possibly can, but you've got to tell us who you want to be close to, and I match them off every year. So if you, and I try to keep years together. Now I know in Thurles it's all first years, but no, you don't. And also there's a twin room sharing usually. We haven't made a final decision on whether we're going to allow sharing rooms next year with the pandemic. It depends on where we're at with by September. I'm hoping we will, but there are twin rooms in Courtbrack, so friends do usually kind of put their names together and want to share rooms like that. But no, we don't, and we don't even separate counties. You might be a Kilkenny man in a corridor with another with a Cork man, so you're going to have to just get friendly, okay? But we don't know. We don't let people know who they're sharing with on a corridor or whatever. Okay.
Thanks very much, Jan. And I suppose, like you said, the main thing is it could be a pleasant surprise. You don't know who, and if you do have friends, just get in contact beforehand, and you'll try to put them together. Further question for you, John. Would you probably mentioned a little bit already, but would you just be able to tell us a little bit about cost per semester for both the Limerick campus and the Thurles campus? Okay,
yeah. Okay, both campuses, the deposit is €750. And if you're unsuccessful, you get 650 back, and that's returned into the whatever bank details are on the form as soon as we possibly can. That's why we ask actually for bank details, is so that we can return monies at the time as quickly as possible. But when you receive a place on the course, the breakdown of the deposit is 250 of the deposit is a security deposit, and the other €500 are your utility charges and electric charges for the year. Then Courtbrack offers three different types of room. A standard single room for the year is €4,218, payable either in full or in two payments of 2,109. A deluxe single room, which is basically single occupancy in a twin room, so it's a bigger room. The full year charge for that is 4,542. That's payable either in full at the beginning or in two payments of 2,271. A twin room sharing then for the full year is 3,244 euros per person, payable either in full and or in two equal payments. Thurles offers a single ensuite room and is 4,218 euros for the year, also payable in two separate payments. If you decide to pay in full on either of the campuses for the full year, you get €100 discount. Now I'm after throwing a lot of figures at you there, so it's all available on the website. I think I explained how to get into the accommodation page. There's information sheets in a number of different places, so click on them and you'll find all the information there, or just ring me at the office 061 302 500 and I'll be able to give you any information you need. But that's very quickly. I hope you haven't been trying to scribble down those figures really quickly, but that's really what the charges are for the year. And then the other private accommodations, their websites, the links to their websites are there as well, and their prices possibly aren't up for next year yet. They don't usually start taking bookings until February. This year could be a little bit different, but I think it's mid to late February when they'll be taking bookings this year. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, John. And a couple of follow-up questions to that as well. One person wants to know, is the accommodation first come, first served, or how does it work? And they also want to know as well, can you request to stay with someone in a room even if they are in another year?
Absolutely. The answer to the second one is yes. If you want to share a room, it doesn't matter what year they're in or what course they're in. If they're a friend of yours and you want to share, that's no problem. With regards to, what was the first question again? Sorry.
Just, is accommodation first come, first served?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's not a lottery. Some places run lotteries, but no, we don't run a lottery. It is really first come. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's great, John. Thanks very much. We have a couple of questions on fees now, so I might go back to Teresa for a moment.
Sure.
So
Hi.
first question for you, Teresa, is you kind of touched some of this already in your presentation, but just how much are the fees for undergraduate programs in MIC?
Okay, so they vary by course. So so everything's available on the website first of all. And so if I give, for example, if I work for the Bachelor of Education program first of all, so it would cost, the tuition fee is 2,564. That might be paid by the HEA if it's your first time in college and you're an Irish person. The HEA will fund that for you. If you are, then the student contribution element of that is €3,000. SUSI, if you're eligible for the SUSI grant, which is the means tested one, they will pay that for you. SUSI might pay half of it as well, and if not, then the student has to pay that full €3,000. And then aside from that, then there's college levies that the student pays, and the HEA or SUSI don't fund that. So for the Bachelor of Education program, then you have to pay an IT support levy of €25, the school placement levy of €60, and that every year, so for the 4 years of your course. And then in first year only, you pay a Garda vetting levy of €50, a sportswear levy of €95, and the art park levy is €30. And then in your final year or fourth year, you pay a graduation levy of €45. And just to go back in the tuition fee and the student contribution fees, so the 2,564 and €3,000, if you do have to pay them and they're not funded by the HEA or SUSI, you pay those every year of your course as well, so every year for 4 years.
That's great. Thanks very much, Teresa. Just that's a lot of detail there. As we said, all of this is available on the fees page on the MIC website as well, so do have a look there as well. And just, I suppose, a follow-on one to that is maybe just run through how students pay their fees, and do they have to pay it all in one go?
Yeah, sure. So after you register with the college, you're issued a student ID number and you complete a financial registration process. So your invoices are generated there and then for the course for the full year. At that stage, you can choose to pay it all in one go, or you can choose to split your invoice into two installments. So you pay the first installment in September and the second installment in January. So that's mainly how you can pay. Then the other option is, if you are in a bit of financial difficulty, you can choose to have a payment plan where the fee would be split into maybe 9 equal installments over the academic year, and you could pay that from September right through until May, and there is a €50 charge for that.
That's great, Teresa, thanks. We might go over to Kate now next, because we have a couple of questions on our sports scholarships. So first question, Kate, you mentioned the Elite Sports Scholarship. Can you just tell us how much that is worth and how many are available each year?
Okay, well, the sports scholarship scheme, it's the Elite Sports Scholarship scheme. We have 2 of them available in the college, and they're worth up to €4,000 each year. So they're paid out in, it would cover that €3,000 that Teresa just mentioned in their school fees, and also they'll get a small bursary. They will also get sports gear, MIC sports gear, and they get membership to the gym. So there's only 2 of them, unfortunately, and like I said, it is for all MIC students, so there's quite a big competition there. So we really are looking for elite sports scholarships for those schemes. But that's not to say that our incoming CAO applicants aren't in that range, and that's what we're hoping, you know, so it would be lovely to see one of those kind of get one of those scholarships. So as well as that, it's a bit like if they get it this year, they can apply for it every year while they're a student here, and even if they go on to do a postgraduate course here. So even if they don't get the elite scholarship this year, they would be eligible to apply every year. So the possibility as they improve in their sport and career, you know, kind of they improve their chances of getting the scholarship. So it's for up to €4,000, and like I say, it's available for all.
Thanks very much for that, Kate. And a follow-up question to that then, are the elite scholarships and the CEO points concession sports scheme available to students on the MIC Thurles campus?
Yeah, they're available to all students. We would love to see applicants coming forward from Thurles. As we did last year, we had quite a few. So it's open to all students, you know, kind of across both campuses, no doubt.
Yeah, a very good point to mention that. So whether you're thinking of going to our Thurles campus or our Limerick campus, you can apply and you can be successful. One further question then, Kate, you mentioned already, I suppose, about the level applicants should be playing at. Could you just give a little bit more detail about what level you should be playing your chosen sport at to have a chance of getting a scholarship?
Yeah, I can. I'm just going to look at the slide myself so that I don't give the incorrect information here. Okay, so for the elite sports scholarship, we're really looking for students who are at a slightly higher level because of the nature of the scholarships. So applicants for the elite sports scholarship must clearly demonstrate that they have the potential to, or that they're already performing at inter-county level with respect to Gaelic games, adult, international, or achieving at the highest level of participation within their sports. You know, kind of, so if they're coming from a basketball, they really need to be competing at kind of national level, you know, so it's slightly different. So that's what we're looking for when we're talking elite sports scholarship. On the other hand, for the students that are applying for the concession scheme, really there's a standard or a minimum standard of participation, and there you're looking for we'll say the list is on the website, but I'll go through a few. So for example, if it's rowing, you're looking at junior national representation. For basketball, as I mentioned, anything from Super League level and or national junior squad representation. Soccer, schools or the age grade international or provincial representation. There's also some emerging talent programs overseas or UK equivalent programs that are there that students could be performing at. Rugby, for example, you're looking at school or age graded international, provincial and or international representation. Perhaps if they're kind of members of the academies that are based in Ireland or overseas, as the case may be. Athletics, you're really looking for somebody at schools, stroke Gaelic or the Gaelic games or junior international representation. Hockey, interprovincial, international representation, and then Gaelic games, you know, kind of minimum standard there. We're looking at minor county level and needless to say capable of competing at higher age levels. So there's quite a spread there. So really what you're looking for is students that are playing at a sport that is recognised by the Irish Sports Council, and really they're playing at kind of their age level appropriate standard, you know, kind of, and playing at above it if possible, and really at that top performance for the elite scheme.
That's great, thanks. Yeah, no, that's very comprehensive, Kate. Thanks very much. We might go back to Maura now because we have a question on about the HERE programme.
Yeah.
Hi, Maura.
Hi.
Just a further question. This person wants to know what is the equivalent of the HERE programme for mature students? Or is there an equivalent scheme?
It's actually the admissions office that looks after the admission routes. Let's say for the BA programs, they apply, and the BEd programs, they apply to the CAO for the admission entry.
Okay.
I would actually prefer now if the inquirer would actually send their inquiry to our admissions at mic.ul.ie. But I do know that for mature students, for example, who do not have the minimum requirements for the BEd program, that Mary Immaculate College runs what they call a teaching a TEAP program, teaching access to a teaching access program, where, for example, if they don't have the minimum requirements for English or Irish or maths, Mary Immaculate College, in conjunction with the Limerick and education boards, they actually run a program so that the student can do their Leaving Cert and try and meet that minimum requirements in order to apply as a mature student. In actual fact, Pat, I'd say you possibly know more about that program than I do. And then for mature students who've been away from college for a long time, or who may not have the traditional Leaving Cert, they can actually get a taste of what college is like by doing a foundation program, a foundation certificate program in Mary Immaculate College. And it's a year-long program, part-time basis. And if they get a merit, they can actually apply as a mature student for our BA programs.
No, that's great, Maura. Thanks very much. And I suppose, like you said, that person's first port of call should probably be to the admissions office.
Absolutely, it's the admissions office, as they will go through the whole criteria with them and the admission process.
Yeah, and you can email the MIC admissions office
at mic.ul.ie.
Yes, that's their email address.
Yeah.
So one further question, Maura, is just about the language waiver. How this person wants to know, how do I know I'm eligible and how do I apply for it?
Okay, we don't actually give you the language waiver. It's actually your school that gives you the language waiver, i.e. in the fact that you did not study Irish at second level. Normally, the school principal of the second level school you go to has applied for you on your behalf, and the Department of Education and Skills would have granted you a waiver from studying Irish to Leaving Cert level. Right? So you have been the student would have been granted a language waiver at second level, not to do Irish or another language at Leaving Cert level. Are you with me? So yeah. That is at second level, but we don't know at third level that you have received this language waiver at second level. We don't know that a student has this language waiver unless the student informs the third level college that they're applying for. So if a student is applying to Mary Immaculate College and they have received a language waiver from their second level school, they need to let us know that they've received this language waiver on disability grounds. And they have to submit an application, and they also need, when I talk about supporting documentation, they need to provide a copy of the certificate of exemption signed by their second level school principal and send in that copy with their application to have it noted.
Thanks very much for that, Maura. We might go over to John now because we have an accommodation question. So, John, question accommodation here. This person wants to know, do most first year students stay in Courtbrack? And that's obviously on our Limerick campus.
Yeah, well, a lot of them do, but the other private accommodations I mentioned earlier, City Campus, for example, They have a total of, I think, 664 students staying there every year, and 95%, 90 to 95% of them, well, not this year, but most other years, would be Mary I students, ranging in throughout the years, but on average around 280 first years stay in city campus most years. Then there's Punches. They take all first years. There's about 75 to 80, and then here in Corkbrack, well, the majority of students in Corkbrack every year are first years. This year, I'm seeing a lot more second years looking to stay here because they didn't stay anywhere last year. You know, they haven't ever stayed, they haven't been to the college really with the pandemic. So there are a few more than usual, but we welcome all years in Corkbrack. So usually second, third and fourth years go to the likes of Ashdown Accommodation, or they go to private accommodation, or they rent houses together. They've done their year of on campus as such. But and city campus is very, very popular as well. So there's a number of different places. So have a look at that accommodation page, and if you've any questions whatsoever about any accommodation or any questions, and no matter what, we deal with most of them. So just give us a ring in the office here, and we'll be able to fill you in on what's what. Okay.
Thanks very much, John. And just a follow-up question to that. On the Limerick and the Thurles campus, is there Wi-Fi available in the accommodation?
Yes, yeah. The college Wi-Fi is available in both. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, that's great, John. Thanks very much. I might go back over to Teresa now for a couple of, I suppose, fees-related queries. This question, Teresa, it might be maybe more an admissions question, but I'll just put it to you anyway. This person wants to know what financial grants are available to mature students.
Well, I suppose it really depends if it's their first time attending college. If it's their first time attending college, they're eligible for the HEA funding, maybe eligible for SUSI if they haven't claimed it before, obviously, and it's means tested. They would be the main ones. But if they have utilised grants before, it would be unlikely that they'd be eligible for those types of funding again. They could always apply to the SAF funding within the college, which Maura spoke about earlier, and again scholarships. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. If they have any more specific queries, they can send it in to me.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks very much, Teresa. And a follow-up to that then, I suppose there's two questions really. What happens if a student does not pay their fees, and are there any supports for students who are struggling to pay their fees?
So if the student doesn't pay their fees, they will be blocked from accessing their results at the end of each semester, and also they won't be able to progress to the next academic year. Then at the end of their, say if it's coming up to the end of their college life and they're due to graduate, they won't receive their official graduation parchment until they have paid their fees in full, and at which time the graduation parchment would be released then. And sorry, what was your second question?
Just with fees, are there any supports available if they were struggling to pay their fees?
Yeah, so the payment plan option would be one that they can split the fees out over the entire academic year. It would make it a little bit easier to pay it off over the year. And also, again, the SAF funding in the college, that it can't particularly be used for fees, but it can go towards contribute to other costs that the student may have for transport, books, etc., accommodation, and scholarships as well. They would be the main things in the college. And also the Geraldine Brosnan's office, she's director of student life, her office does offer some supports, and the student would have to make a claim into her office and she might provide some funding, but it is on a case-by-case basis that is assessed.
That's great. Thanks very much, Teresa. We might go back to Kate now for some sports scholarship questions. So, Kate, you mentioned the CEO points concession scheme that's in the college. So, just basically again is how does it work in relation to your CEO points? So you might just briefly go through that again, if you don't mind.
So when a student or when an applicant applies to the CAO, they apply directly to the CAO, and they must also apply online to on the sports on online and make an application directly to the college for the actual scholarship. So once what we do here behind the scenes as such is we will download all the applications and they're assessed by committee. So the students that are eligible for the points concession scheme will be ranked, they get a 1 to whatever ranking, depending on the number of students that are there. So what we do then is once the students the points are out and the students are made offers, they will be looked at, and students that don't fall within the points that are at first round. So say, for example, the points for the program are 400 points. Any students lower than 400 points that would actually be on the panel to be considered for a scholarship will be considered at that point. So unfortunately, we only have 10 places available across the college, so they get snapped up fairly quickly. So a lot of the students that will actually be on the list for the scheme will actually have gotten entry to the college on their own credentials that they will have met the points. But this is only for students who won't have met the points and that would be within 40 points of that program. So it's quite a tricky, kind of where you're placed on the list isn't necessarily relevant, because you could be number 50 and get a place, or you could be number 10 and get a place. It all depends on the numbers that have been eligible on their own merit, kind of opposed to the students that are within the 40 points. The other thing is you may well be within the 40 points and unfortunately be outside our 10, kind of places that we can offer. So it's just bear in mind, it's not that it's a lottery, but making a good application will help, So when the students make their application to the CAO and then make their online application, the applications will be considered by a committee in the college, and as such, they won't actually know whether they're eligible for a place until they actually get their 40 points, because it's not relevant until you actually need your 40 points. But students can contact us, kind of at that time, when the offers go out, etc., to see, kind of if they're outside the number of points or within the number of points. Once they get their offer, we can have a chat with them at that point.
Thanks very much, Kate. And just a follow-up question to that, then I think you mentioned it already, but when is the deadline for applying for both of those sports schemes?
We've tried to keep it open as long as we can, so we're leaving it right open until what would be considered late applications for the CAO, which is the 1st of May. So it is kind of a strict deadline. We won't be able to consider students after that date, and it's really just to reiterate that. So it's open now. It's been open from early December. We have a few applications already, so we're hoping that the numbers will increase as the applications come into the CAO and they make their online application directly for the sports concession scheme. 1st of May then is the closing date, and we'll contact applicants, we'll say after that if necessary.
Thanks very much, Kate. Next question, I might just answer it myself. It's to do with, this person wants to know, are there any other scholarships that aren't sports related? And the answer is yes, we have entrance scholarships. There's over 50 undergraduate entrance scholarships available. They're valued at €2,000 each, and they're on the basis of your results obtained in the Leaving Cert. So if you just go to our scholarship page on the mic.ie website, you can find out lots of more information about that there. So one final question, and I think it's for John. It's an accommodation question. So John, this question is from a hopeful first year, and they want to know, should I be putting a deposit down somewhere now? Is it too risky to just put a deposit down in one place? So you might advise.
Well, at the moment, I'm still taking deposits. So if that person would like to give me a call, I'd run through it with them. But at the moment, I'm taking booking forms and I'm still taking deposits in Workback and Limerick, and also in Thurles. So we're still open. The likes of City Campus that I mentioned earlier, the private accommodations, and Punches haven't even started taking bookings yet, and they don't even have their pricing up for next year. So keep an eye on the websites and their websites for those. They will let you know. And I think if you like them on Facebook, either of those properties, you will get an automatic message when they're going to start taking bookings. So you got those still ready or haven't even started taking bookings yet. But for us, if you're interested in Corprac, I would be getting a booking form into me and following up with a phone call, and we'll get you sorted out there. But we are still taking for both places. So look, as I said, give the office a call and I'll talk you through it. No problem. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, John. I think that's all our questions have been put now to our presenter. So I think that brings this session to a close. For anyone that has been viewing today's session, please remember that this is recorded, so you will be able to look back over it if there's some areas you want to refresh. It'll be available on the micopenday.ie website in the coming days. And if you do have any questions for any of the presenters, they've all given their contact details there. You can always go to the mic.ie website and just search for accommodation or fees or sports scholarships or access and disability office as well, and you'll be able to find lots of information there as well. So thanks for tuning in to us this evening, and all the different talks in this series, our CAO Virtual Talks Series, are all available on the micopenday.ie website. So if you do want to check out about any of the different programs as well, you can do that at your own leisure. So thanks again to all of our speakers for giving up their time this evening, and thanks again for everyone else for tuning in, and that brings this session to a close. So thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Pat.
you.
Thank you.